So, here we have Florence BRACHET CHAMPSAUR, Head of Cultural Heritage and Funding from SNCF. I'm also calling Patrick Barberon, who is the Head of Arts and Culture Program of France Alzheimer. Please, Patrick, please have a seat. Maura O'Malley, founder and CEO of Lifetime Arts, coming from New York. And Cathelijne DENEKAMP, Manager Accessibility and Inclusion of the Rijksmuseum, Amsterdam. Okay, so there we go. Are you hearing me? Okay, good. So in France, the subject of care for older adults has, and their place in society has, as we all know, been very topical in the recent months, following the publication of the book Les Fossoyeurs by the independent journalist Victor Castanet, which revealed, as some of you know, the mistreatment in certain care homes and pointed the finger at problems of management and control of certain establishments. This also showed the otherwise largely insufficient debate on the lack of financial resources and more broadly, maybe the lack of vision and ambition to support this absolutely major societal change. And this is despite the psychological fragility of communities of older adults following, of course, the lockdowns and extreme isolation they have suffered. So also surveys show that there is a general social consensus on the invisibility of the subject of age. Yet, the subject is a hot one. In developed countries, for instance, the over 70 years will represent more than 20% of the population of the EU in 2045 compared to 13% today. In Japan, which is, as we all know, the country with the highest proportion of older adults in the world, half of its citizens will be over 50 by 2023. And then on a global scale, today there are 1 billion people over 60. By 2050, there will be 2 billion. And as we all agree now upon the fact that museums have an important social role to play, we have been talking about this topic a lot during these 2 conference days. So in this roundtable, we have chosen to focus on the way in which museums can contribute to the well-being of older adults. And more fundamentally, in the face of this huge societal issue and this huge societal shift, we propose to address how culture can participate in the fight against ageism, against ghettoization of older adults, and for a more inclusive society overall. So, with us today, like I said, we have Florence BRACHET CHAMPSAUR, who supervises cultural heritage and funding at SNCF, which is the French railway company for those who are not living in France, and who will inspire us today with innovative digital experiences she has been organizing with the Centre des Monuments Nationaux and with startups. We have Helene CLARI, who is the Director of Social Missions of France Alzheimer. France Alzheimer is the major national French organization dedicated to helping people with Alzheimer and their families, to fostering research and more generally to change a perception of Alzheimer in the society. We have also from France Alzheimer Patrick Barberon, so who oversees the cultural program. And coming from Amsterdam, like I said, Cathelijne DENEKAMP from the Rijksmuseum, who will take us through innovative programs she's developing towards communities of older adults inside the museum and outside the museums. And coming from New York, Maura O'Malley, co-founder and CEO of Lifetime Arts, which is the leading creative agency, aging service in the United States. So Maura is going to explain us how Lifetime Arts is promoting positive aging with the arts and with lifelong learning. So Maura, you started thinking of Lifetime... Sorry? Do you hear me? Okay, good. Yeah. Sorry. You started thinking of Lifetime Arts in the early 2000s, and you told me that at that time very few cultural organizations were offering arts programs beyond one-off events. So can you please explain us how Lifetime Arts was born and what your goal was and is, and what type of projects you are doing with museums?
Thank you, Annabelle. Can you hear me? Okay, great. So thank you for inviting me, first of all, to participate in this important conversation. I'm here from New York with my colleague Annie Montgomery, who is our Director of Education. And I'm happy to share our work in what is called the field of creative aging in the United States. It's a growing field adjacent to and intertwined with the arts and healthcare arena. Creative aging focuses on older adults, 55 years of age and better, we like to say. It encompasses a wide variety of practice areas, including the art therapies. But at Lifetime Arts, we develop and implement skills-based participatory instructional arts programs that include activities that are designed specifically to promote social engagement. In short, it is arts education for older adults. Creative aging programs are offered in all disciplines, and they are organized or facilitated by professional teaching artists, and I think that here you might call them mediators. I'm not sure how you do that here. Importantly, participants in creative aging programs generally self-select to participate. And as we all know now, people are living much longer and healthier lives, and positive aging proponents look at aging as an era and a time of life for activity, for opportunity, for engagement, and for expansion. And that is something that's quite different from the ageist attitudes and world that we have been brought up to that we've been growing up in. And increasingly, creative aging programs are an important part of this positive aging movement, which is now probably about 25 years old. And it's largely motivated and catalyzed by baby boomers like me, who are not going away anytime soon. So it's an idea that people are, there's three major trends that are happening that are sort of working together to support this effort. And the one, of course, is the gigantic change in the older adult population worldwide, including baby boomers, which results in the demands of a different kind of programming and services to meet the needs of today's older adults. And there's also new and current and a lot of research around the fact that engaged active learning, especially in the arts, has multiple health and wellness benefits, especially for older adults. You know, those of us in the arts have always known that the arts are good for you, but there's actual really scientific research and studies that are proving that it's especially good for older adults. And then the other third trend is that organizations that serve older adults or should serve older adults are realizing that they have to change the way that they do programming. That one-shot and passive entertainment deals are not serving older adults, and that we all need to change. And museums are included in this work. So with the population aging at this sort of unprecedented rate, it's not just a blip on the screen. This is a permanent change in the world population. And as we said, there are going to be statistically people over the age of 60, many more than under the age of 17, for instance. So it means that organizations, institutions, governments, agencies have to change their services and have to change the way they think about who, in fact, is in this world. So we are talking, when we talk about creative aging, we're talking about 55 to 100 years old. It's a 50-year span. It's incredibly diverse, other than age. It's incredibly diverse in terms of race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, religion, economic status, access to technology, geographical location, and population density. This multi-generational 50-year span includes everyone from people who finally have time to follow creative pursuits to retirees experiencing isolation after their built-in social networks have dissipated. It also includes empty nesters and those whose familial relationships have ended or shifted due to relocation or loss. And it includes people with or without partners, LGBTQ+ and immigrant elders, as well as veterans, prisoners, and refugees, and the many people who are living beyond the 80s and 90s. And yet still all of us often refer to older adults as other, as an alien group, like those old people over there. There's nobody out of the aging club. We are all aging every single day. And so this work kind of helps us to think about, how do you want to grow old? And it's changed. People now have approximately 30 more years of life than they did in 1900. When Social Security in the United States was started, the retirement system started at 65 because most people were dead by 70. Not the case anymore. People are living into the 90s and 100s constantly. So Lifetime Arts was established in 2008 as a service organization to help build an infrastructure for this field. At that time, there was some notion about the idea that older adults and arts engagement was a good thing, but there was no infrastructure. There was no professional development to train people how to do this work. There was the biggest barrier, which is ageism, and the notion that older adults are, part of, for instance, in public libraries in the United States, older adult services were relegated to the outreach department, which also included prisoners, homeless, at-risk kids, and old people, as if these were the needy and frail and marginalized sectors of society. So that has changed dramatically over the years, along with the population increase. So our goal is to build the capacity of organizations that serve or should serve older adults to deliver and sustain engaging, participatory programs that recognize older adults as learners and as creators. And we aim to shift the traditional senior programming. Senior is a term, actually we had this question yesterday. Senior is a term that is not used in the United States very much anymore. It has a negative connotation with it, and so the term older adults is becoming more and more used. So we aim to shift traditional programming from passive entertainment and one-shot deals to actual engaged learning, and to honor older adults as creative and social learners. Our overarching goal really is to shift the narrative around growing older from a negative point of view to a positive one of community and joy and optimism. And so to do this, we train teaching artists, or mediators as you call them, and programming staff to understand how programming for older adults differs through rigorous training and coaching and technical assistance and a significant amount of resources. We have online courses because it is a challenge for most people to think about older adults as creators and learners. If we think about arts education, programs are generally geared towards school-aged children. And so that notion of sequential skill building over time is something that most organizations who serve older adults don't actually know how to do, especially if they're not arts organizations. So social service organizations, public libraries, and even museums, because there are, historic museums, historic societies, there are botanical museums, and all these other cultural institutions that don't generally offer learning programs. They offer learning programs for kids and for families, but not for older adults. So this is the work that we aim to support. And we also train around the issues of ageism and its impact on program design and delivery. And we found over the years that, we all have a sort of an implicit bias about becoming old. Being old is frail and feeble and dependent and needy. And this effort, and through this kind of work, really changes that attitude around what it means to grow older. And it's much more fun to think of it in a positive way than in a negative way. Our direct service model is based on a traditional artist in residency model. It's multiple sequential instructional workshop series led by a professional teaching artist. They are student-centered and participatory. So these are experiential work. These are not one-shot drop-in programs. They generally require registration so that people commit to the number of sessions. The average number of sessions is 8, and they are generally longer than a regular class because it includes 2 major things: the idea of mastery and social engagement and skill building, and also the idea and the implementation of intentional social engagement. And the reason for that is that as we grow older, there's a natural series of losses that occur. You retire from work, your kids move away, your spouse dies, all kinds of things happen, and it's loss after loss after loss. And so the idea of intentional social engagement creates communities that are learning-centered, that help to rebuild and develop new relationships and new connections around arts learning. And again, it's important to remember, I think, that this is all arts disciplines, not just visual arts. So the other thing, you have to cut down. Okay, that's it.
Sorry.
I'm trying to get 15 years of work into 8 minutes. It's not very easy.
It's impossible.
But we'll have time for questions and answers, and I'm around if anybody wants to ask more questions.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
The fascinating activities. So now we move on to the Rijksmuseum. So Cathelijne, you are engaging in many innovative ways with communities of older adults inside the museum, but also outside the museum. And some of your projects you've been doing outside the museum have become very famous, actually. So could you tell us more about your projects?
Yes, of course. Thank you for the invitation also. And I'm glad... Same as you, that I just changed in my notes everywhere where I have elderly, I changed it in older adults. That's of course, because I'm not speaking now in my own language. Now, art can make people feel better. And for example, people with lonely feelings. And loneliness is a growing problem in the Netherlands, all over the world. And especially among older adults, and especially during Corona. And we think at the Rijksmuseum that we can offer distraction and that art can also connect people together. I feel like I belong again. That was a reaction from an older person in response to our program Meet Me at the Rijksmuseum. And that's a program where older adults from Amsterdam are invited in the Rijksmuseum. For older adults who feel lonely and who would like to meet other people who are interested in art. We pick them up with a bus, people who live in the same area. And they come 3 times to the Rijksmuseum with the same group of 15 people and with the same tour guide and the same volunteer, which is an employee of the Rijksmuseum. And because that's for safety, that some people don't dare to come to the Rijksmuseum because we are in the middle of the center. It's always busy. Where do you have to be? So now you're picked up from the bus and taken to the coffee table. You get coffee, tea, and then a cookie. And the tour guide you get name badges. So tour guides often call you by name, and you get a tour in the museum on foldable stools. So we have the piece in front of the artworks, and the tour guide gives drawing assignments and asks questions. So you have the chance to meet each other. So the art is the vehicle for the conversations, for the meetings. And after every tour, it's always the meeting is 2 hours, and then after that you get a postal card of an artwork we have discussed. And after a month you come again, and then after another month again. We do it by purpose 3 times, so we have the rest, because if you come only once to the Rijksmuseum, we have to hurry to see all the highlights, and now we have the rest, and also the rest to meet each other. And the last time you get a picture of the group, you see an example here, and also each other's contact details, because we hope that you might have met someone and who you can call and perhaps visit another museum together. And what we also do is make staff aware. And one of the things how we do that is every staff member has to go once in 1 hour in a disability suit through the museum. I also have a picture of that. And yeah, it is heavy on your weight, it's heavy on your wrists, on your ankles. You wear glasses where you see less, and a headphone you hear less. And you get a tour of 1 hour. You also do a bit in a wheelchair. And it is just to show how difficult the museum can be and how big the museum is when you have physical limitation. It's for awareness. And every employee has to experience this once, of every department, director, security, people from financial department. And then during Corona, when we were closed, we came up with a letter project. And that's employees of the Rijksmuseum. They wrote a personal story about an artwork, what they really liked, an artwork in the Rijksmuseum, and they wrote that in a letter. And we sent that letter since the beginning of Corona till now. So we've been doing that for 2 years now. Every 2 weeks we send one letter to 1,000 older adults. Yeah, it's a beautiful, these are all beautiful stories, because these are personal stories from all the persons in our company. And because not everybody is an art curator, so it's not all art historian stories, but it's very personal. So we get a lot of reactions back. It's really nice. You get a letter and also a nice picture of the painting, what it is about. And we get reactions like, it's the bright spots I look forward to every 2 weeks, and I keep all the letters in a folder, and I feel like I belong to a club or so. So it's a great project, actually, and it's really simple. And then I would like to take you along to the project Night Watch on Tour, which is the next picture. Now, the first lockdown in Corona, that was terrible because the nursing homes were locked. So the residents could not go out and visitors could not go in. Luckily, that's over now. But still, there are people who can never come to the museum. And we thought, why don't we bring the icon of the Netherlands, the Night Watch of Rembrandt, to them? Do you know it? Yeah, I was talking about, but I didn't know the word in French. What is the title in French of the Night Watch? What does... okay, but you all know what I'm talking about. So we made a lifelike replica of the highest resolution photo with a frame around it. And we put it in a nursing homes for 3 weeks. And the residents can then go to it and watch in peace on their own or with a group. And they can look very closely and even touch it. I mean, it's not possible to touch the real night watch. And there are 4 night watches traveling through Europe, past nursing homes. And they always stay there for 3 weeks. And each resident receives also a beautiful brochure with information, and we have a whole program around it. And because everybody almost knows the Night Watch, so you always recognize it, because you have seen it in real life, or on a picture, or on the picture on a cookie jar of your grandparents, for example. But if you have a memory of it, you can talk about it. And also people feel more confident. I've met people with dementia who became bigger because they could tell me a whole story about the night watch. So yeah, it's a way to meet each other. And there was a woman who told me that she was with her 94-year-old mother in her care home. They watched the night watch, and this mother never talked anymore. And she was watching it, and then she said suddenly, Rembrandt. And then this woman was like, whoa, you can imagine it was a really emotional moment. And when they were back in the room, the mother had forgotten everything, but it was a very emotional moment for mother and daughter. And we also visit nursing homes with VR glasses. You can, I don't know if that works, that video.
La vidéo, s'il vous plaît.
Then we have 20 VR glasses, and then we go to a care home, and then all the residents put on the VR glasses at the same time, and after that we talk about it. And with these VR glasses, you walk through the Gallery of Honor. You follow a tour, but you can watch yourself all the beautiful decorations and the paintings. It doesn't work? Now you see, it's such a lifelike experience that it can actually evoke emotional reactions. And this was a little film what we made by accident, where a lady cries.
Sorry for the technical issue.
Ja, wat fijn dat u het zo mooi vond, mevrouw.
Ik was ontroerd.
Oh.
Ja. Nog nooit gezien.
Anyway, I posted on my LinkedIn because it was so nice. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, you can see this film.
Okay,
And
yes,
it was
indeed.
actually how Annabelle found
LinkedIn.
me.
Yeah.
Because it's really, it is just a film made by phone. It was by accident. But the reaction of this lady, it was beautiful. And she was, because she had been in the past in the Gallery of Honor in the Rijksmuseum. And now it was like if she walked there again. And then, yeah, she got emotional. Oh, here.
Mooi, hè? Wat vond u ervan? Zo te zien zit ze zo. Was u voor? Nou, heel leuk. Geef me even een papiertje.
Hier, een slokje water.
Ja.
Ja?
Dat is een hele
Ja, wat fijn dat u het zo mooi vond, mevrouw.
Ik was ontroerd.
Oh.
Thank you. Please stop the video. Thank you. We go back to the PowerPoint, please. Okay. Thank you, Cathelijne. It's all very, very moving. À présent, chère Florence, je repasse au français.
Now to Florence, back into French now, and where you are trying to spotlight SNCF heritage and working in inclusion. Recently, you developed a project on with an RV virtual VR experience. Sorry, in the retirement homes, working with the National Monument Center and a startup company. Could you tell us more about that, please? Yes, hello, and thank you for inviting me. I am thrilled to share this experience with you that we set up with Lumen, startup company. And this is a slightly different situation from what we saw where the SNCF is French Railways. We're not a museum institution at all, but we're a transportation company. But this brings us to the specific situation of our heritage and our historic assets, because we are one of the leading asset holders in France. You see it everywhere. It's sort of the daily bit of what our historical property is. And I came in the end of 2018 to create this new division for the patronage and historical property division. And the idea was to get the audience to have a different viewpoint on this sort of daily historic property. And it was paradoxical because we see this as daily, but it's everywhere, but it's not necessarily accessible to everyone. And the French Railways company is very innovative. They're a very innovative company. So what I wanted to do was make the link between our historic property that would both reflect the past and the present and the future. And this culture of innovation that is historically part of the company. So I've been trying to develop projects that spotlight our historical assets via innovation. So the first initiative that we did, that we took in this way, was about a space that people aren't very familiar with, but it's quite atypical. It's an active shelter from the end of the 30s under the rails, under the Gare de l'Est, Eastern train station. It's a bunker, to use a simple word. And we wanted to open that space up for the European Cultural Heritage and Historic Monument Days, which is it's a single day during the year where people can go in for free. So it was really interesting for us. And okay, we open these up once a year, and very few people can be welcomed in, though you have very high constraints, especially for people with reduced mobility. So our first thought process was we wanted to be able to have a visit using virtual reality, leveraging the SNCF internal ecosystem. We have a VR, VA, AV, augmented reality, sorry, AR fab. And so we wanted to do this at the same time, have it open to public, and allow everyone to discover this place. So then comes COVID, of course, and what we wanted to do was increase the number of initiatives so that we could keep this historic property accessible even for people who couldn't come to us. So we created a platform. It was SNCF.fr with all the digital property that the SNCF has, and to pick up the pace and the strategy, leveraging innovation to make our historical properties accessible. We started working with the National Monument, the Center for National Monuments, as a sort of incubator to work with startup companies. And so we had an RFP, request for projects, to work with startup companies who would help us move faster and develop some new and different actions. So there were over 80 candidates. We selected 3 and opted to work with Lumine. And Lumine is a startup company that really got to us, and I think the jury and the incubator really liked them. They were really interested in their project because they developed virtual reality for a specific audience, senior citizens, older adults, in retirement homes, so for older adults. And so we worked with them to create an immersive visit, and we came up with a new train, the yellow train in Occitania. That's a train that's over 100 years old, and the train goes through just amazing landscapes. So we had the train plus the environment that we wanted to share. And so Lumine, so this was a first for them. This was the first time that they'd created content, such high quality content. And so they came and they filmed the journey on the yellow train. And concretely what we were interested in was the virtual reality, but with a more collective dimension. Because in the retirement homes, so you would have like 5 to 6 residents having this experience with the VR glasses, but they also have a mediator with them. Comes from either an association or working in intergenerational issues. And so there's an iPad so they can see, so the guide can see what the retirement home residents are seeing at the same time. So you have the 360 experience, which is produced and adapted for the specific audience. We're very careful about motion sickness issues, to not have any sort of unpleasant experience while watching the video. So it's from 8 to 10 minutes long. So it's all specifically adapted to the audience. And once the immersive journey is over, then the moderator will ask some questions and they'll have dialogue about it. So the idea is to recreate social links through this experience. So not only the idea of them as sort of an escape, getting away in the immobile journey, right? The immobile trip for an audience that can't actually take the trip, but also establishing social connections through this shared experience. And then there's part of it's stimulating cognitive faculties and the memory with a questionnaire. So there are two different levels. You have the questionnaire based on the adapted to the audience, but allowing for stimulating memory. Right, thank you very much, Florence. Now, Helene and Patrick, you have developed the program Art, Culture, and Alzheimer's, working with several different museums in Paris and outside of Paris. Could you tell us more about your program? Hello, everyone, and I thank you for Museum Connections for having us here on the roundtable. The discussion here. We're going to have a short presentation here for you. We're an association. It's a public. It's a family association in the Alzheimer's and related diseases. So we work based on a network of 101 associations present in all of France's departments and overseas territories. 2,500 volunteers working every day, accompanying patients and caregivers, 150,000 members, donors, and companies that support us. So the inception of the project, Art, Culture, and Alzheimer, came about in 2014. So organized on the World Alzheimer Day, and that's the 21st of September. And we organized at La Villette here in Paris. So there was someone in charge of these publics, the audiences who were prevented from coming into the museum, where you didn't necessarily have the Paris Philharmonic there yet at the time. So they all asked us to have an exchange, a task force, to put together visit itineraries and workshops for the public that we would be accompanying, that we would be working with for neurodegenerative diseases. People, okay, so the Cité de la Musique, and thanks to the subsidies from the Swiss Life Foundation and the Foundation de France, we were able to come up with the seat to the rhythm of memories and encouraging other people to get involved and develop this program, the pilot program. Then 2015, the Department of Economic Development of the Palais de Tokyo met with the Swiss Life Insurance Company to develop a new partnership. So Swiss Life, that was working with Alzheimer at the time, suggested then starting to partner with our associations. And then very quickly, then we had the Picasso Museum, and now we have a large number of museums with us around Paris and the Greater Paris region and beyond, and almost all of the departments and counties in France. So the idea of accessible for all, so museums welcoming public people living with impairments, and specifically cognitive and neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's. So in addition to this, we added taking into account the aging population, requiring specific programs for this type of audience, because beyond cognitive impairment, there's loss of mobility, declining vision, and all of these that need to be taken into consideration in addition to just Alzheimer's. So here we have the opportunity to develop missions of inclusion to change the mindset of the public who has stereotypes. But also individually, we could have an impact because the people need socialization, be it families who don't go to the movies anymore, go to the theater anymore, won't allow themselves to go out with friends anymore because it's complicated. So we established these adapted visits for people. So there's conviviality, there's socialization, there's just bringing back enjoyment into their lives. So the visits then, in fact, they're couples or pairs. So it's a person living with the impairment and then the caregiver, so two people. And so they meet, they get there on their own, and either taxi, public transportation, and then we reimburse them for that. We cover those costs, and they're accompanied through the sessions by volunteers who are trained specifically for this. And then the visit of the tour of the exhibitions is done through a cultural guide, and that can be followed by workshops and also a therapist. 2021, we of course had to we got started again after the lockdown in 2020. So 2021, we had several cultural sites closing back down again. So up until and it was 19th of May, and then we had very strict health provisions, and so everything was gradual. However, we didn't shut down the entire time, COVID. So we were working with the museums to set up virtual visits, and so that met a certain amount of success with the Picasso Museum and Jeu de Paume. So, and then we met with the general public. We had some flyers. So if you have the QR code, you can see the Parisian Association. So we can communicate across the associations in Paris and beyond. I'm going to now hand over to Patrick, who in the Paris Association coordinates the Alzheimer Art, Culture, and Alzheimer scheme. Right, thank you, Helene. I'm in charge of art, culture, and Alzheimer's for the visits in the Paris museums. Today we have 10 locations that we visit in the Greater Paris region. And we're hoping between now and the end of the year to double the number of locations we visit. Some museums were mentioned by Helene. Every day we're looking for more partners to diversify our offer and enable people to discover new spaces. In Paris, we're lucky to have so many cultural options. So most of our members, I think we can cover most of our members' needs in the first half of this year, and we've about 50 visits organized, and we've managed to impact about 50 different families, and that represents about 400 people visiting the exhibitions on the first half of this year, and we're hoping to go further between now and the end of this year and expand our offer much further than that. Thank you very much to both of you. Now we have just about 15 minutes, so we're going to go very quickly. Florence and Helene, I wanted to ask you about the ecosystems and partnerships, because I'm thinking that your projects bring together stakeholders that are quite diverse. So we can wonder to what extent this assemblage of all these stakeholders coming together who are so diverse, and everyone bringing in their knowledge and networks and skills, how is it? Is that why these projects are so sustainable? Who wants to go first? I'll go in. I'll jump in here. Well, now for this activity, we have an overall budget between 20 and 25,000 euros. So the museum visits is made possible due to this fund, the Swiss Life Fund contributions. The main mission then is to act on sustainable health, to give them creativity and solidarity action. So there's this networking, as it were, that takes place through our associations and the museums. So I was talking earlier about transportation that's covered, and that is thanks to our two partners, Malakoff Humanis and l'AG2R, the life insurance or health insurance, the social protection specialists and cultural assets as well. So the Foundation Swiss Life enabled us to establish partnerships with large museums, lots in Paris, of course, but there's also the Musée des Beaux-Arts, Fine Arts in Lyon. And in 2022, we were looking at the Cité Musicale in Metz, the Museum in Nantes, and the Photographic Center in Marseille. So all of the associations that want to benefit from subsidies for transportation. In fact, we send them an application at the end of the year, and then they send us what their requests are, and then we put people in contact and we reimburse any costs that they've spent, and then the departmental associations develop their own partnerships as well for museum visits.
And I wanted to show a video that was created by Swiss Life for the first visit to the Grand Palais for the Toulouse-Lautrec exhibition that shows you how these types of visits happen. They're all different, obviously, but it gives you a good visibility of how this is taking place.
Je voudrais commencer par ces petits tableaux. Quelqu'un peut me dire ce qu'on voit sur ces tableaux?
Oui, déjà Toulouse-Lautrec.
Oui, Toulouse-Lautrec représente un miroir.
Aujourd'hui, au Grand Palais, dans l'exposition Toulouse-Lautrec, nous accueillons un groupe de personnes atteintes de la maladie d'Alzheimer. Et ils se sont volontiers prêtés au jeu de regarder les tableaux, de répondre aux questions. Et quelle ligne il dessine dans la composition?
Merci, je pense qu'on va continuer.
Vous avez l'impression de voir un profil, peut-être?
On va abréger la vidéo si vous voulez bien, parce qu'il nous reste...
Thank you. We're going to cut the video short because we only have 12 minutes left. Florence, you want to add about the partnership of ecosystems that you have? Yes, in 2 words. For us, this is an open innovation approach because it is the collaboration between a big group like SNCF and Lumine, which is a startup. And for this experiment to take place in the best conditions as possible and with the success that it had, we've had several players alongside with us. The Center for National Monuments, they're also a public agency involved in heritage, present over France. So there was already a good match right from the get-go. We also had School Lab supporting us. They're a specialist of the partnerships between startups and large groups. And within SNCF, it is a project that really set in motion our own management, but also locally the TR Occitanie section, because the yellow train is in that region of France. What was interesting as well was that we had developments that we never imagined in the beginning. For instance, our real estate division also manages homes for the elderly, and we've experimented this with the residents And in order to do this, we were supported by the CNAV, which is the retirement agency for the Île-de-France region. And we've also worked with a nonprofit that is involved in the mediation and relationship between generations. I hope I'm not forgetting anyone. The experiment is continuing with a new visit in virtual reality at the Museum for Trains in Mulhouse that is showcasing the heritage of the SNCF railway company. But this ecosystem has been a great experiment because there's been a lot of enthusiasm around this project and it's helped everybody move. Thank you very much, Florence. One final aspect that I wanted to broach, because I've heard all of you talk about changes in perception.
I would like to explore with some of you would be the fight against ageism. And I would like to start with you, Cathelijne. We have 8 minutes left, so in a few words, I'm sorry because it's such an important topic, but we have to speed up. How do you see the role of the Rijksmuseum in particular and of museums in general in the fight against ageism and in face of this huge societal issue?
I want to say three things. First of all, I think that the museums have a big role to play in the impact of art on elderly, because research shows that art can have a very positive effect on well-being of elderly people, and it brings positive emotions, deep relationships, and personal and artistic development. I also want to say that Palais de Tokyo, they will, for example, open this year a care center for art and well-being. So they collaborate with hospitals and the French Alzheimer Association. And in Canada and Belgium and Sweden, you can even get a museum visit as a doctor's prescription. So I find that fantastic. It seems that the impact of art is seen as never before. And their museums have a role to play. But secondly, museums can also organize programs to create awareness about older adults. So, for example, we do now an intergenerational program with young people and people with dementia who go to the Rijksmuseum together and make art together and an exhibition. And both groups look in different ways, so you learn from each other. And this project ensures that young people come into contact with people with dementia, because in the Netherlands they're usually locked up in nursing homes. And thirdly, sorry, almost finished. We have a collection from the Middle Ages till now, and it's interesting to see in our collection how we looked at older adults through the ages. Often in the past, older adults were seen as wise people. It would be my wish to organize an exhibition about how did we look at older adults in the past and what can we learn from that now.
Thank you, and also what you're doing with your staff, like this experience of putting heavy waste, for their awareness, also contributes to that. Yeah. So thank you so much. So also to you now, Maura, you told me that when you started Lifetime Arts, your goal was also to contribute to the change of perception of age in society. So, well, can you tell us how you proceed?
Yes, we think of the most challenging part of developing programs, instructional programs for older adults, is the issue of ageism and the assumption that older adults either aren't interested or capable or serious about learning. And what we have found, in fact, is that older adults, and again, we're talking about a huge span of people, we're talking about 50-year span of people, come to this kind of work with seriousness about learning. They know what they want to learn and how they want to learn it. And in public programs or community-based programs that are dealing with not with the populations that you're dealing with in the Alzheimer's community, but the bulk of the population of older adults, which is living in community and independent, the work is not available. There's not opportunity. And so this work to basically allow and provide opportunities for engagement is important. But what we found is that training around ageism is critical for every stakeholder, whether it's an institution or institutional staff or the teaching artists who conduct the work. And we also find that, that there's an enormous amount of self-inflicted ageism. For instance, an older adult who won't go to a senior center because it's full of old people. And people have said that, so the assumption of disability and of need and of lack of interest is a myth. And I think the acknowledgement that older adults, ageism is prejudice against our future selves. And it's not helpful for anybody, and it diminishes every aspect of life. And accepting and endorsing this kind of working with older adults as intelligent, social, engaged people expands opportunities for institutions and organizations and communities and families. And so it is. It's a topic that has to be explored. It has to be talked about. It has to be seriously attended to. And then you have to create opportunities to diminish it in terms of even curriculum development. Early on in this work, we would get a curriculum from, for instance, a music conservatory, and they were offering to teach people, because they were old, they were going to sing radio and television jingles from the 30s and the 40s. So who wants to do that at any age, ever? What's the learning there? What's the point of that? And that's not what this work is about. So we have spent a lot of time talking about who we are as humans, and that aging is just a natural, it's part of living. It's part of our lives, and so it's something that cannot be ignored and has to actively be addressed and remediated. So,
thank you so much, Maura, for these strong words. Indeed, you can keep the micro. We have 1 minute left. If there's one question from the audience, if there are no questions, yes, there's one question, please, sir.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much for these very interesting comments. It strikes me that even in the utilization of technology, there are certain limits to scalability, which inevitably raises the question of resources and who is going to fund the explosion of older citizens and their needs. So I'd take any response from anyone, really. But Maura, maybe?
Sure, yes. One of the things that we learned through the pandemic was, just like everybody else, everything stopped. Previously, most of the work was we trained to deliver programming in person. We did our training in person, and everything had to pivot to online. And there was an assumption immediately that, well, old people aren't online. Old people don't have access. That, in fact, is not true. There's a major research done in the United States that said exactly that 67% of older adults, meaning over 65, are actually active users of technology. And so what we found is, first we had to change our training. We had to train teaching artists and organizations about how to deliver and design online programming. And the organizations, many organizations, including many museums, began to deliver programming online, and they found that the attendance and the participation skyrocketed. And it was critically important. In terms of funding, one of the interesting things about this work, in terms of creative aging, is that it is intersectional. And a lot of the work we do is around helping agencies and organizations across sectors to consider older adults as a common constituency. And we have been able to foster and catalyze partnerships between, for instance, the State Library and the State Veterans Association and the State Arts Council. And they have begun to collaboratively design and administer and fund programs. In the United States, all federal agencies and state agencies are responsible for delivering services and programs for older adults. there has been, until recent years, because of this movement, there has been very little effort to, for instance, to have professional development for, say, for older adults, adult service librarians, had no training around anything but the problems of aging. They will deliver programs on credit card fraud and taxes and medical information, but not the consideration of older adults as learners or people who are to be engaged. And so in recent years, there's been much greater effort to train museum personnel or social service, senior service organizations to train them around this work in developing community partnerships. Partnerships is a key component to this work. When you begin to look at older adults as a common constituency across sectors, you begin to see different pathways for new funding streams, and new partnerships help to do the work.
Thank you so much, Maura. So we will have to end now. I would like to thank all of you for all these inspiring thoughts and actions. I think we all agree that we have to collectively tackle this huge societal issue as soon as possible and with all possible means. Thank you so much.